You might be wondering, is my grown child taking advantage of my willingness to provide money? Let's help you figure that out and know what to do about it. I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins, a clinical psychologist. I've worked with this over almost 3 decades now of clinical experience. Let's take a look at your situation and see if that's what's actually going on, and then we'll come up with some ways to handle it. If you're asking the question, then there's probably some reasons for your searching out this video in the first place. Sometimes it's hard to balance generosity and the desire that we have to support our children through difficult times or through times when it can be more challenging for them with, am I being taken advantage of? Am I being exploited here? Am I not really helping my child? So I like to look for first 3 indicator feelings. Just check your feelings and see if this connects with you anywhere. Resentment, anger, and frustration. I call those indicator feelings, but they can be a little misleading because usually when we feel resentment or anger or frustration, we think that it's because of somebody else's behavior. And we get our focus off of ourselves and onto what they're doing. We think that they're causing those feelings in us. Actually, those 3 feelings are better indicators of what's going on inside of us than they are what's going on inside of someone else. So we still don't know what, in this case, your grown child's intentions are or how they feel about things. All we know is we're feeling some resentment, anger, and frustration, which means we get to look inside first. And that's part of the strategy that I'll walk you through. Hey, before I share those strategies with you, would you just take a moment to click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell? That way you'll be informed every time we have new content for you to help you with your job as a parent. Here's your first strategy. Change your behavior. That might seem like it's a little misdirected because you want to change somebody else's behavior, but you don't control their behavior. You get to change your behavior and do it in a diplomatic way. I think this needs to start with some communication. Those indicator feelings that I shared with you earlier, resentment and anger and frustration, are an indicator that you need to change something. Your grown child may or may not need to change anything. In fact, they may not even know that there's a problem. Those feelings are an indicator that you need to address this. So you're going to change your behavior. And that might mean that you invite a conversation with your young adult child to clarify your expectations and to express your continued willingness to generously provide, as you have in the past, with the expectations that are attached to it. You might be expecting them, for example, to be working towards some kind of a productive level of independence. And if you don't see that happening, that's going to trigger those indicator feelings for you. So that's something that you get to discuss with your grown child. It's extremely important at this point to maintain control over your own emotions. Get good at regulating your own emotions so that you can take the emotion out of the conversation and reinvest it into the relationship. This is a young adult that we're talking about now. It's not really your child anymore, or your teenager, still your offspring, but this is an adult who has thoughts and opinions about everything that you have to discuss with them. And their thoughts need to be taken into consideration. They may be tracking this in a way that you're not. So we take the emotion out of that conversation. We put it back into the relationship to try to establish a more clear view of what's expected. A couple that I was working with recently had sent their adult daughter off to live in another town to attend college, and they were paying for her rent in this new town while she attended college. Well, obviously the assumption was that they are supporting her in her schooling. Well, as it turns out, she bailed out of school and still expected mom and dad to pay for the apartment in this other town. That violated their expectation. And so you can see that those feelings, those indicator feelings started to come up for them. Resentment, anger, frustration. They needed to have a conversation to clarify what their expectations were. And in this case, they decided, hey, we're okay paying for the apartment, but we want to see that she is productively moving forward with her life in one way or another. So they decided to tie their payment of her rent to her attending a family dinner with them once a week. Interesting solution. They didn't even say she had to stay in school. They just want her in their home once a week so that they can have a conversation with her. And if she's willing to do that, they're happy to pay for her apartment. Now, is she going to resist or refuse that? I don't know. That's up to her. Is this a manipulation of an adult? They're paying her rent. So let's get clear about the importance of the relationship above all of those other factors. She's not entitled to that payment, and they are not required to provide it, but they're willing to. And if she would be willing to do something that they like, can you see how this becomes an economic transaction at some point? But it requires for us as the parents to remain very clear about what our expectations are and to take care of our own emotional regulation. Change your behavior. The second strategy, change your mind. Obviously, the communication that we talked about in the first strategy is important. Let's get clear about those expectations. But what if you were to change the expectations? See, that's something that you can do if you choose to go that direction. Think it through and have a little powwow, maybe a parental powwow, to talk about, okay, what are we willing to provide with no strings attached? Get clear about that yourself. And it's okay for you to do that and to continue to provide it. Now, you might want to ask questions about whether that's actually accomplishing what you want it to accomplish, because you're doing this in the first place to support your kids, right? So get clear about what you're willing to provide without any strings attached. And then it will be easier to communicate the strings that are attached to the other things that you're still willing to provide, but it's based on their decision. Your willingness to provide doesn't have to depend on any behavior or attitude that they have. It can be like any other philanthropy where you just give out of the goodness of your own heart. You do want to know, if you're doing that your contribution, your generous contribution, is actually going toward the good that you intended in giving the gift in the first place. And not that it's hindering progress or being wasted. It's a different skill set to work with young adults, grown children. Cue up this video next. 3 big skills that every parent of a young adult needs to know and master. I've teamed up with my wife, Vicki, to bring you some of the powerful strategies that you can employ as you move into this phase of parenting. Click on that video next.